Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Food, Wine, and Whiskey in Your Own Backyard. I'm Rob, your host, and today's show is going to be, I think, a little bit unique. I think it's going to be fun. It's going to be, definitely you're going to hear about some creativity when it comes to bourbon. I have two guests joining me today. I have Bryan Cotton and I have Cameron Glover. How you guys doing today?
Doing good, Rob. How are you?
Excellent, Rob. Thanks for having me over.
Yeah, this is going to be fun, guys. So the show today is going to be a fun one. We're going to talk to a doctor today, literally a doctor, and a doctor of bourbon, and we call him Dr. Frankenbourbon, and that's because he's, I don't know if this is your thing, Bryan, or if you kind of found it somewhere or what it is, but I've not heard of it, but you've taken some different bourbons from distilleries and blended them together to make something that might be similar to something else that's on the market, or just creating your own bourbon. So we're going to get into that a little bit. And Cameron, you've, I guess, sampled a lot of these. You've had a little trial and I don't know if I want to call it error. I think they've all turned out pretty good, but you've got to go through what he's created and sample these and kind of tell us what you think about them, right?
Absolutely.
All right. So, Bryan, tell me a little bit about you and your journey in bourbon. I mean, I know you personally. People listening don't know who you are and what you're about. So let's tell them a little bit about your journey in bourbon and where you are right now in your 1 million bottle collection.
Sure. So I started out, again, I grew up in Texas, was never into bourbon growing up. College, too poor to afford anything worth mentioning on this show. Then went and did a lot of training across the United States, and finally settled into my first job in Vanderbilt and lived just south of there in the Nolensville, Brentwood area, which is where I started getting into bourbon. Early on, again, during medical school, I was probably more of a Captain and Coke guy. It was easy, it was accessible, and I could afford it. And then started transitioning probably during my training years more into gin and tonics and the occasional red wine. Started really ramping up in the heavier reds like the Cabernet Sauvignon, and I think that kind of transitions into easily. I think you maybe even yourself find that into the bourbon profile if you're a Cabernet fan. And when my wife finished with her after her third pregnancy, we had our third child in Tennessee. She started developing less of a taste for the reds at the time and more wanted I would call it a pungent beer, Heineken. She would call it more of a flavorful beer. And I, instead of splitting a bottle of wine, she would go for the Heineken. So I started looking for something for myself. And again, still being into Cabernet at the time, wanted something kind of bold. And gin and tonic really wasn't it, and didn't want to go backwards to the Captain and Coke phase of my life, and started getting into some bourbons. And initially, those were the standards that all you guys will see on the shelves: the Knob Creek, the Maker's Mark, and things like that, Woodford. And started really settling in as I was leaving Tennessee about in 2009 into the Knob Creek Double Oak. So just a little heavier, a little more oaky, a little more mouthful. And at the time was doing it with a splash of soda or with a big fat ass ice cube, and was getting into those. And didn't really start transitioning into some of the more higher profile or harder to get bourbons until I landed here in Katy. And when I did that, I started developing a relationship with the some local guys that had liquor stores and things like that, and started slowly transitioning into some of the most amazing bourbons I've had in my life.
Yeah.
But there was always that one elusive one, which was the Pappy collection. And
still is elusive.
It still is elusive. In fact, even more elusive. I'm waiting for the rum phase, the predictive rum phase, to take over and people to start being more interested in that and let me get some bourbon back.
I agree with you there. Get after it, guys.
Exactly. But so in an effort to fix that problem, I was online a lot, and I'd missed out on a couple of online raffles and charity auctions, and people had said, well, why don't you just make your own? It's easy. Just do a poor man's Pappy. And so I was like, what the hell is a poor man's Pappy? And so I started investigating it. And when I did, both on through bourbon societies in the local area, and then on Instagram through some pages, found a couple of different recipes for it. And that was my intro to what is now called Frankenbourbon.
Frankenbourbon, okay. And Cameron, tell us, who you are and kind of your experience. And I call you one of the young guys in our group. I mean, we have a group of about 7 or 8 of us, and most of us are old guys, nearing 50 or already hit 50. I could be your dad. Dude. That's freaking, I could be your dad. So anyway, Tell us a little bit about your journey in bourbon. What got you into it?
I grew up in the Katy area, went to Katy High School, and then I went to Texas A&M. Really just drank a lot of beer in college like the rest of us. I was looking for something to transition away from beer a little bit, and I stumbled into bourbon and started collecting a little bit. And then I stumbled into the Katy Bourbon Mafia group and took off from there. I probably have close to 100 bottles now and had some nice high-end bourbons along with y'all guys. And
if I could have had 100 bottles of bourbon, nice high-end quality bourbons at his age, Bryan. I mean, he's
Not
so
even
much
close.
further along than
Absolutely. I mean, I would have.
I'm happy. I'm jealous because you're further along than I was at that age, but I also am happy for you because, man, you're going to enjoy you got a long road to travel, and you're going to get to enjoy it every step of the way. That's pretty cool.
absolutely.
That's pretty cool. So, were you like me? I mean, I didn't know anything about bourbons. What got me into whiskey was Crown and Coke. You kind of the rum or whatever. That was my whiskey, Crown and Coke. A friend of mine got me into it, and he would drink it stronger. You know, I'd be like a little bit of Crown and give me a big thing of Coke, and eventually it would kind of transfer the other way. I'd get a lot of Crown, a little bit of Coke, and then I was like, okay, well, let me try it neat. And I didn't really like Crown neat, and I started looking, and people would talk to me about bourbons. You need to try a bourbon. And the first thing I did was join Houston Bourbon Society and said, okay, I got to figure out what bourbons do I try. And I would go down to Total Wine, and I'll be honest, I'd look at stuff and read their little card for a flavor profile. And if it sounded like something I thought would be something I would like, I'd buy it and try it. I can remember one of the first ones I bought was the Hudson Baby Bourbon. Have you ever had that?
I have. It's one of my. It was the one that changed my bias against. Again, coming from Tennessee for 5 years, that made me say it doesn't have to be from Tennessee
Or Kentucky.
or Kentucky. Sorry, should I say? Yeah,
Yeah,
it
those
doesn't have
two
to be
was
from
always-
Kentucky, right?
yeah.
And Hudson Baby changed my mind on that.
It's the one that made me the same thing where I went, okay, this is a New York bourbon, and it's pretty good. I haven't had their 4-grain yet. Have you had that?
I have, and I'll tell you, I've had mixed bottles. It wasn't very consistent. The first time I had it was spectacular. More recently, I've had it, and I was a little disappointed.
Okay.
But their Hudson Baby bourbon is, again, it's 100% corn, and it knocked it out of the park.
Yeah, I thought it was good. Have you had it?
I have not had any Hudson products.
None at all. You skipped that. You went way to the top.
I guess you could say that.
Us peasants had to travel the road. My daughter will tell you the same thing about wine because, you know, I'm into wine. So she's now 21, 22. She can go out with her friends, and she's like, Dad, my friends don't know a good bottle of wine. I go, honey, you had the blessing of having me and Mom showing you what good wines were. Yep. So your palate's it's been treated very well.
She hasn't had to struggle through the Boone's Farm.
The journey. and you know, honestly, neither did I. I know we're kind of pivoting here, but my wife did that journey for me, and once she got to a certain point, then I jumped into wine. So I skipped all that crap too. So lucky me. Nice. But anyway, let's get back to bourbon. So we all know that we've gotten into bourbons, and it's become a thing for me the last 3 years that, you know, there's good everyday drinking bourbons that we all have, whether it's something from Old Forester, it's something from Woodford, it's something from Elijah Craig, wherever it might be. There's also some pretty cool local distilleries that are popping up around our state and other states, which I think is, you know, it reminds me a lot of either a wines, and I always liken it to wines because it's the flavors that you look for, the different types of whiskeys, you know, they make from one producer. Same with wine, can make different types of wines, the glasses that you use depending on what you're pouring and all that stuff. Just that was what intrigued me and got me into it as well. But it also reminds me of craft beers in the sense that they're popping up everywhere. Craft beers for a long time were very, very popular. Now you're seeing distilleries pop up all over the place. And to me, that's pretty cool.
Oh, it is. It's because, I mean, you think about it, and, you know, all wine's coming from grapes, you know, and all bourbon's coming from corn, you know, at least by law, you know, got to be.
51% anyway.
51%. And it's interesting to see that despite that, and coming from the same distillers, there's completely different profiles. And somebody will, again, love one Pappy, hate another. Some will love the George T. Stagg, hate the Stagg Jr. Some will love, you know, particular Blanton's barrel, and then the next barrel is not as good. It's all over the place.
Yeah, it could be Blanton's. It could be the Hanover, the Hancock. Excuse me. It could be the what's the other one that comes
Oh,
out
Rock
there?
Hill Farms.
Rock Hill Farms.
Yeah, all from the same mash bill.
All
And
from
then, of course, Elmer T. Lee, which is my favorite.
and
of
Elmer T.
those.
Lee.
Yeah.
And I've seen people who go, I like these 3, but not this one, or I like these 2, not these 2, but they're all the same mash bill from the same distiller, which is
Yeah.
kind of unique. But to me, it gets back to the simple thing that you like what you like. Try it if you like it, drink it how you like it. There's no right or wrong way, and I always say that about wine too. You like what you like. Your palate isn't going to lie to you.
Oh, that's what we were talking about before we started the podcast. Is just where we've gone on our journeys in bourbon, and especially through social media, which again is just a whole other a podcast in and of itself. It's social media and trolls and people, keyboard warriors and things like that we talked about. And it really is. It makes it just what you just said. It doesn't matter. It's what you like. If you like Screwball, drink some Screwball.
That's peanut butter whiskey for you that don't know.
Yeah.
70%. And
Yes.
it's the only whiskey my wife will drink.
It is amazing on
She
Tres
likes.
Leches. That's what I had it on when we were at Rob's house that night. We had it on Tres Leches, and it was amazing.
That's a good idea.
Actually, was it at Sean's or your house? One of the two, but we had the
Yeah, I think it
Screwball
was
on.
here because they were chugging it here.
Affectionately known in our little KBM group as Pappy Van 60.
Pappy Van 60. That's right. Thank you, Sean.
Yes.
So that's a little bit about bourbon and just kind of what we think about it. But the point of the show today is to talk about how creative you've been, and you, as you said earlier, you see those unicorns, if you will, the Pappies and the old Rip Van Winkles and birthday bourbons, and I mean it could be other things, George T. Stagg, all these things. But you found a couple in particular that you could figure out how to maybe make what you call a poor man's version of, and those two are.
The Poor Man's Pappy was the first one, and then the more recent one, and I think I will tell you from a voting group in our little extended group, the Poor Man's Birthday Bourbon has been the clear winner.
Okay, not even close, was it?
No,
I mean
no.
it's pretty spot on.
Yeah, we'll go over some of them here in a minute, but I would actually, Poor Man's Pappy was a winner at the initial gatherings we had, and then when we stumbled onto this Poor Man's Birthday Bourbon, that took over first place, at least in a voting. Everybody's different taste profile, but that won number 1, and I think actually number 2 is a bottle we're going to kill today called Poor Man's Preacher, which we'll talk about in a second. But that's really that's really a Frankenbourbon. That's not really trying to replicate anything because I'm bastardizing or mixing or doing true Frankenstein witchcraft here and mixing stuff together.
So you've got quite a collection of bourbon at home.
I do.
You're up to 450 bottles plus. Something
No,
like
I'd say 350 to 400.
that? I think you're selling yourself short, Cameron.
I probably have close to 100 bottles,
But Brian's collection is
Oh,
probably
yeah.
close to.
400 plus.
Yeah, I would agree. You're selling yourself short. You've been shopping this season.
A lot
too.
of those are doubles though and triples. So
Okay, they're still bottles.
No, they are. They are.
So you have 400 plus different bourbons.
Probably about 300 different bourbons, and then I have several that I've got 2 or 3 bottles of.
Okay.
Several, a lot of them, because that's my go-to thing, and you do it however you want. I always try to get a second bottle before I open the first. It's not always the case. You land a Pappy, you just open the Pappy.
Yeah.
You land the birthday bourbon, we're going to open it today.
At least that's our rule.
That
in
is
our group.
No, it is in our group. Yeah, and I always
Nobody wants a trophy.
No one wants a trophy. I want to see the bottle open. And again, I always like to have a second in reserve in case I really, really love it.
Yeah, if I get one, I'll start drinking it. But before I maybe kill it, I want to have another one. But it doesn't always work out. But we'll keep playing the game, right? So you've had experience with a lot of bourbons. That's my point for asking that. You've drank a lot of bourbons.
Correct.
And you've had Pappy and you've had Old Forester. But your palate has just kind of, in your mind, you just said, hey, I want to start kind of playing with some things and see what I can come up with.
Right. Yeah. So it started initially, Poor Man's Pappy was my first one. And like the birthday bourbon, until recently, I'd never owned a Pappy product. I had never owned an Old Forester birthday product. And I wanted to get one of those. After the Poor Man's Pappy was such a hit, I started researching some other takeoffs. One was an Old Man's 4-grain, or a Poor Man's 4-grain, supposed to be a kind of the E.H. Taylor 4-grain. I don't think it really hit the profile of that, but I've never had the E.H. Taylor 4-grain, so I can't really comment on it. And then from there, I just started out of, again, just because I had a collection I could afford to pull off some mixtures and some bastardization or some Frankenstein process there, I could start pulling some stuff together, and I started doing it. And I started researching to kind of figure out what the hell I wanted to do. And although we have a bunch of winners on the table here today, I had a lot of losers I poured out that just didn't make out. And it's just a lot of trial and error, and it's not a lot less science, a lot more art and luck.
Okay, just luck. Really?
Yeah. I mean, some of these, like for the poor man's Pappy, I lined up, for example, Weller 107. Again, we're getting back to the mash bill of the Pappy product, so all wheated. I did Weller 107 and Weller 12 year, and mixed those based on some stuff I'd seen online. And I went through a 60-40 split on one, a 40-60 split on the other, and then a 50-50 split. I probably did about 3 or 4 different concoctions, and the one that seemed to rise to the top, at least for my taste profile, was the Weller 107 60% and Weller 12 40%. That seemed to be the winner.
And that was the winner because it was the closest to?
We're going to find that out today. What you think about that?
You brought a bottle.
I bought several bottles of the Poor Man's, and then I brought a real bottle of the Old Rip Van Winkle 10, and we'll figure out what you guys think today. But I will say, winner being that one. I actually like the Weller 12 60% and the Weller 107 40. About the same, but when I took it and shared it with you guys at Dandy Liquor, after party raffles and gatherings at your house or at other places, beer biryani, kebab, and get-togethers, things like that, that's when the Weller 107 dominant, the 60% Weller 107, 12% Weller 12, seemed to be the winner amongst the group. And so that's when I started making more bottles of that. Yes, and I made more bottles of that, yeah.
And it's good stuff. Now, let me ask you, is there a process? Meaning, how do you put the bottles in? Do you put them someplace? Do you let them sit for a certain amount of time? Does it vary the time versus what you're trying to do and what the proofs are? I mean, kind of what's the process when you start looking at making a...
Sure. Yeah. So I went online and I researched for the initial. I'll go back to the Poor Man's Pappy because that was the first one. I went online. I found different instructions, different suggestions, and one of them, believe it or not, is to not put it in one of those little cute little barrels you'll get at the liquor store.
Yeah, like that right there.
Yes, and I at some point I'm going to do it. I'm going to play with it in a barrel. But the ones that I've saw online said those are virgin barrels. They've never been treated. They haven't been charred. Even if they have been charred, they haven't been used before. Whatever. It's going to make it too oaky. They've already been in a barrel for X number of years. Let's say it's a Weller 12. It's been there for 12 years, right? So don't re-oak it, in other words, and don't make it too much. And that's what I've heard a lot of nightmare stories of people that have tried to do Franken whiskey, Frankenbourbon have found. So what I did is put it in a new glass bottle. What I usually do, and I like to do, is you'll see here I've got a Four Roses, I've got a Michter's 10, and I've got a Blanton's bottle, and I'll put them in a clean bottle. So I'll soak the bottle, get all the labels off them, really wash them out good, let them dry, get all the water out of that bottle, and then I'll start mixing the winner for that mixture, because again, I go through several series, like almost scientific experiment like, and line up what's the one I think is the best. Put them in small mason jars. I have probably about a 4-ounce or 6-ounce mason jar that I get at the store. And I'll put those away for a week or two, taste it. The winner, I'll make a full 750 bottle out of.
Okay.
And then I will put that bottle away in the dark in my closet for 4 to 6 weeks.
Okay.
I've seen people suggest for the Poor Man's Pappy even up to 6 months.
Really?
And so I have about a 10-month, about a 9-month old Poor Man's Pappy here on the table, and I've got a few month-old Poor Man's Pappy. We'll see which one's better.
So have you ever, and I'm sure you have because you've had these for a while, but have you written and taken notes or made some conscious effort to distinguish, I tried it at 6 weeks, and then I tried it at 3 months, and then I tried it at 6 months. Does it change? Do you see that it continues to evolve?
I haven't codified that in the form of like an Excel sheet or something like that, and I should have, and I kicked myself in the ass for not doing that earlier. But I can tell you that over time, the taste profile absolutely changes.
It does.
Yes, and then I'll let you guys be the 2 other votes today to see which one tastes better. But the aging process is supposed to be better. I will tell you that I usually, again, I go a minimum of 4 weeks, sometimes longer.
I'm just wondering where it levels
it
off.
peaks. Yeah, where does
does
it
that peak? And then it's not going to change anymore.
Yeah.
So you go, just drink it.
Yeah, I haven't done that, and I'll tell you that I get real excited when I do it. A little too, too excited teenage boy or kid here, and I go and start sharing them and taking them up
And it's
to
gone.
yes, and then they're gone. And that's great. That's the fun of making it. And then when people feedback, whether they're blowing smoke or they're serious, and they tell me how much they like something, then I go buy another bottle, and that's what happened with this Old Forester when it really knocked it out of the park with the poor man's birthday bourbon. Everybody really loved it. I'm like, really? And they kept echoing over and over. I'm like, okay, maybe they're not all lying to me and blowing smoke. And so then I went out and bought a bunch more 1910 and 1920 and made 2 more bottles. And those are staggered in age as well.
So those are the 2 we're going to sample today and do side by side, which is the Rip Van Winkle 10-year and the Old Forester Birthday Bourbon. So since we've touched on that, tell us about, you talked a little bit about the Rip Van Winkle and the Wellers that you use. So you just mentioned it, 1910, 1920 from Old Forester. What are we doing with those to make the birthday bourbon?
So with the Old Forester Birthday Bourbon, again, similar to the poor man's Pappy.
And I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off.
No.
We'd love to hear from you at any time, Cameron.
He's just sitting there young and happy. And
Jump
taking
in
it
here, man. You got some opinions on this stuff. Shout them out. Okay.
Yeah, so for the Old Forester or the poor man's birthday bourbon, what I did with that, similar to the poor man's Pappy, I saw different things online for it. I did a 50-50 split, a 60-40 split, a 70-30, and then in both directions, heavy 1910, heavy 1920, and came up with what I thought was the best, which was the 60-40 split of the 1920 and 1910. So 60% 1920 and 40% 1910. And interestingly, it lines up almost spot on the proof of the 2019 Old Forester Birthday, which we're going to actually open as well.
And that's proofed at 105?
Yes, the actual Old Forester Birthday is 105 this year, and the poor man's knockoff of mine is 106 point something.
Okay. And the proof of 1920 is 115. And the proof of 1910 is 93.
93, yeah.
So you have to, the ratio of those is to get the proof right where you want it to be.
Yeah, and honestly, that's probably the first one and only one that I tried to match proofs of. You'll see a lot of these other that are true Frankenbourbons that I wasn't going for anything other than just mad science, where I just was mixing stuff together to see what that's got a little bit too much spice to it. I'm going to add a little bit more of this. This one's got not enough of a mouth on it. I'm going to add some higher proof stuff. And I've done that, but for this one in particular, I actually, for the first time, that was the one I actually tried to go proof on.
So, again, I'm not very knowledgeable in bourbons. I know you guys are way more than I am. The Old Forester, let's just be on that bourbon right now. When that gets bottled at the distillery, is it the same bourbon that goes into 1910 and 1920? Because when it goes out into the barrel, it's got to be no more than 125. Is that what it is?
Yeah, 125
something
or 123,
like
something like that on some of the. Yeah.
And then it can't be any higher when you bottle it than like 160, isn't it?
That's
something like that.
That may be
and no lower
side.
than 80, right?
Yeah, correct. The 80 is correct. Yeah.
So is it the same juice? It's just the way they age it, the way they put it in the barrel, as the 1910, 1920? So that we really are getting the same bourbon?
It's not the exact same, but they're similar. So here's probably a good way to look at it. And again, you're giving me a lot more credit for knowing about more bourbons. So I would call myself more the artist or the mad scientist than the scientist on this one. But to me, I would make the example of same baby mama, same baby daddy.
Okay.
So they come from the same mash bills. They're using that same isolated yeast and mash bill to put it together, but it's a little different. Like I got 6 kids, and they all came from the same baby mama, same baby daddy, but they all look a little similar, but they all are a little bit personalities. They're all different personalities, different profiles. Okay. So it's probably a good way to look at.
So bourbons, there's some you like better than the others.
Right, exactly.
We're talking about your kids.
I know. This is recorded. I got it.
No, but that's a great point. That's a good way to put it, because that's exactly right. There's sometimes, I can cook a dish the same way twice, and it comes out different the second time than it did the first time. So you're exactly right. But this works out pretty close, you think? And we're going to get an example of it because we have the actual birthday bourbon here. That was very nice for you to bring.
Absolutely.
So, Cameron, you've tried these before.
I have.
All of them that you have. I mean, not all of them, but the 2 specifically are the
besides
Pappy and
besides Greg Davis at Dandy, he's probably the second most taster of these Frankens.
So my question for you would be, When's the last time you tried these Frankenbourbons?
Probably last weekend.
Last week, yeah.
Okay, so do you have it still pretty good in your mind?
I do.
What the flavor profile was and kind of what you remember
I couldn't
about
give
them?
tasting notes, but I can
Yeah,
tell you
but in your
good
mind,
or,
yeah.
good or not.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
'Cause I'm curious to see. I've never had them, so I've had the birthday,
Poor man's birthday.
the
Poor man's
Frankenbourbon,
right. Poor man's birthday.
but never in comparison to the actual.
No, right.
So I'm going to be curious to see how close, but I'm curious to see if in the week and week half's time if it's changed at all in what you remember having a week and a half ago. How old are these, Brian?
So which ones?
The birthday bourbon and the Pappy.
Or
the old-
the
the Rip Van
Frankens.
Winkle, yeah.
So lift up the bottom. I can't remember exactly, but they all have a state. So the Poor Man's Pappy that I'm looking at right now is from June 18 of 2019.
Okay, so that's probably peaked.
And then I have a Poor Man's Birthday Bourbon from November 12th of 2019.
Okay, so that's fairly recent.
And then we have a couple others that we could sample up there on the side that are some Poor Man's Pappies. This is the 107. This is from April of 2019. And so there's several different different ages we can play with here.
Well, if you guys are ready, I'm ready to jump in and see what we think a little bit and talk
Absolutely.
about it.
Yeah,
I think
let's
there's
do
plenty of Uber drivers to help us out.
So you brought them, Brian, so you get to pick what we're doing first. What do you want to do?
Oh goodness. Okay. You know what? Let's do this. Let's pour out two of the Poor Man's Pappies. I've got two of them here. One from April and one from June. Let's pour those out, and then let's pour out a actual Old Rip Van Winkle 10-year.
Okay. So we're going to have 3 pours each?
Yes.
Okay, let me get a couple
Small
of glasses.
pours, Rob. Small.
Small. Like 4 ounce?
No. We need the little tiny little the chick that's in the liquor store giving you the small tiny samples. That's what we
The
need.
plastic sample
The little
bottles.
yes.
I need to get some of those, don't I?
Yes. Thank you. Oh, man. These are an underappreciated bourbon glass because it doesn't look like it. It's a little tulip. It looks like a combination of a little port glass with a little bit of almost a Glencairn finish to it on the top. These are good. I like these tulips.
Trying to keep us in the same type of glass because I know glass can sometimes
Oh yeah.
make a little difference on what you get out of it. But I'm letting you guys stay with the Glencairn. I don't know what the proper way is to say that. And I'm going to do the 2 of those, and I'm going to do the 1 Canadian whiskey, a little bit bigger bottom and a little bit bigger mouth.
Did you get that? Here, let me get that for you, Rob. Here, there we are.
That's real Pappy right there.
That will be the real Pappy. That's
And for you bourbon, elitists and truists, it's 10 years, so we know it's not Pappy. It doesn't start till 15 for Pappy.
correct. Sorry. And the drawback. So I use these little tiny mason jars or miniature mason jars. The drawback to them is they are great to fill. They suck to pour out.
Yeah, I just noticed that.
They spill all over the dang place.
Did you get this? Say again?
Paper towels.
Oh,
Yes, right there.
And then this is the more recent. That's June. This is April in this mason jar.
So this is June.
Yeah.
All right, so we've got glasses poured,
That one, yeah.
and I'm glad I have 3 different glasses so that I won't forget which one's which.
Yes.
So does Cameron. Sorry, Brian, we're confusing you.
No, that's fine.
So how do we start? What do you suggest?
Oh, goodness.
Dr. Frankenbourbon.
Oh, goodness. You know what? Let's start with the gold standard, which is actual Old Rip
Okay,
Van
I would
Winkle.
agree.
How about that?
So this is the actual 10-year Old Rip Van Winkle.
Make sure I pour the right one.
Great nose on it.
Yeah,
It does have a good
it
nose.
does.
And this is proofed at what, 107?
Yeah, and the attempts of what I have poured are closer to 100.
Okay.
But yeah, they're a little bit lower. But yeah, so have to take that into consideration.
So Weller 12, what is that proofed at? I know
It's
107.
at 90, I believe.
It's
Oh, it's right at 90. Okay.
Yeah, so it's
Antique is at 107.
Yeah.
So you almost have, boy, that is hard to get it to 107 then.
Right. Yeah, that's why it's
When you
closer
blend.
it's closer to, it's not, yeah, it's closer to 100 because you've got 60% 107, 40% 90 at 90 proof. So,
Yeah, I wonder if you've never went higher where you've done like 70-30 just to try
no,
to get
I did, but it tasted more like 107.
Oh, it did.
And not
Okay,
a combination.
it just took over.
Yeah.
Okay. What do you think, Cameron?
Good nose, great finish.
Yeah, it's over at Van Winkle. It's a great one.
I mean,
Blind
it's
or
just
not.
smooth.
Yeah.
It's just, I get a lot of creaminess. I get a full body. The finish is nice. And on the mid palate, it's not hot. I mean, 107 is still not a high proof.
Right.
But I've had some bourbons that are 90 proof that you go, man, it's just hot on the palate.
Yeah.
This isn't. This is just
This
very
drink's under
pleasant.
proof for sure.
It does.
Correct.
Very, very nice. I enjoy that. So we're going to finish this bottle? Is that what you said?
We can do that.
Nah, I'm kidding. Okay. That's good.
Smell the same to you? I'm sure I didn't mix them up. I don't think I did.
So from there, we
All right.
have a June, which
Let's
I
do
can
the
tell is a
June.
little lighter in color than
Yep.
the one from April
Yep.
still. And you have a preference on which way we should we,
Let's do the
April should be first since it's older and see if it's got that.
I don't know. Let's finish with the April. Let's do June,
Okay.
and then we'll
Okay.
try the next one.
I'm curious on this one now.
It's got definitely a different nose to it. I like the actual Van Winkle nose better.
More vanilla on the nose on this one.
Just you
definitely more
It's just
vanilla.
bigger, bolder.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's because of the youth of this one too. 'Cause
True.
now you've got me curious. I'm jumping to it. See, I'm going to tell you right now, I know I cheated there, and I went all three on the nose just to see.
Yeah.
And the April one is not far off from the original,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
Yeah. On the nose, I think you're right with a little more vanilla. I think on the mouth, I think the old Rip's got a lot more. Again, I like higher proof. I like Booker's. I like Elijah Craig barrel proof. So I do like the mouth on the original, the gold standard old Rip. That said, I think kind of like Weller 12, I think not a novice, but a more young bourbon drinker, and I don't mean that by chronologic age, but more just time and drinking it, would appreciate this one more than the old Rip, actually. I think it's milder. I think, because again, I always think Weller 12 is a great intro bourbon to people that want something a little hard to find, but are not really into bourbon yet.
I'm going to tell you, though, that the younger one, and I haven't tried the one in April yet, but the one in June, on the nose, I don't get as much similarity. But just trying it on the palate for the first time, it's close. I get that, a lot of similarities with what I got on the other one. The proof's not quite as high. You can obviously tell that, but the creaminess and the finish, and I mean, it's I can see that this is, same mama, same papa.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's, again, what I was really trying to get at and why I use that analogy.
Yeah, that's a good way to
I don't think anybody thinks it's going to be an absolute replica of it.
Why would anybody chase it anymore?
Right.
Yeah. But it's fun to play with it. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and that's also part of it. I enjoy it. I've done some silly things on Instagram where I videotape myself mixing them and tasting the different
Why have I
wines.
not seen these? Have you seen
Are
these?
you on Instagram?
I'm not
Yeah,
on Instagram.
I'm on Instagram.
Brian of Bourbon.
Okay, I follow you.
BRYAN.
I just started following you because you were suggested to me.
BRYAN, Brian of Bourbon. Yeah. And I'll show some goofy videos of me doing it. Sometimes I even play with the video and make it kind of like 8mm look to it.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
And my wife gets thoroughly embarrassed every time she walks by my closet and sees me filming.
All right, now I'm going to.
We go with the.
This
is
is
from
take another
the
sip
old
of
one?
the original.
Okay.
And then I'm going to go to.
Okay, all right,
and then
I'll
I'm
do
gonna
that.
Go to the April, just to kind of refresh my palate a little bit. So, Cameron, while we're doing this, just talking about bourbon, this is that season, right? This is the hunting season for us bourbon lovers.
It is.
It's the allocated season.
It also sucks.
It does suck.
It sucks.
What are you?
You have to be
what's the-
unemployed.
What's the big game animal you're trying to take down?
I'd like a 2019 George T. Stagg or a William Lear Weller.
Okay, those are your two big ones?
Two big ones.
All right. Yeah. Do you have any years of those already?
I have a 2017 George T. Stagg.
That's what I have. I have a little bit left of that. Brian, what are you hunting?
Oh, good God. Well, we talked about before we started. In fact, when we warmed up, for you guys that don't know, we warmed up with Elijah Craig 18, which is probably my favorite bourbon ever, to be honest with you. It was one of the first, if not the first, unicorn or hard-to-find bourbon that I landed when I started getting into it. I had been frequenting a liquor store here currently, and one of the guys that worked there, Leo, was like, hey, how about I got something in back if you're interested? And I'm like, okay, I've never been offered to have something in back.
Yeah.
And he said, it's Elijah 18, it's a little pricey. And I'm like, at that time I was full tater mode. I'm like, yeah, let me have it. I'll take it. And he brought it out, and I think it was like $115 sticker price. And I'm like, took it home, and I'm like, this is the greatest bourbon I've ever had. And today still, it's probably now second based on the 2019 George T. Stagg, which is absolutely better, I think, than in my taste profile, than the 18, 17, or 16s that I've had either in person or at a bar. The 2019 is absolutely amazing, and it probably beats the EC18.
I just got my hands on that, as you guys know. And I had it before. Chris Jackson was nice enough. We went to a dinner one time, and he was nice enough to bring a bottle and let me have a pour, and it was fantastic getting to sample that. And recently I was able to get a bottle, which was awesome. So, I'm glad to have that one. But if I had to be honest and tell you which one I'm hunting, and I've been hunting it since well before allocation season started, it's my new favorite rye, and it's from the BTAC series, so you guys know.
Thomas Andy?
Thomas Andy.
Thomas Andy. Yeah. So
I'm looking for that one.
If I could rock, paper, scissors. All right, that's a good question. It's a nice segue. So anytime I get an EC18, that's my go-to. I'm haven't got that this season. However, I did get an Amaranth Grain of the Gods from E.H. Taylor, which was kind of my go-to to have, and I landed it, so I cannot complain. But all right, if you could have one BTAC, and again, forget that I just told you the 2019 is the greatest George T. Stagg ever. If you could have one BTAC of all those, yours would be Thomas Andy?
Well, it is now because I've only had one pour of it, and it just sticks in my mind. And now I'm just like a little kid, chasing something because I just want it so bad.
That was being the Amaranth.
Because I have a Stagg, I have a William LaRue. I know the Eagle Rare 17 is like really hard to find. So, and then the Sazerac, I've never had it.
I've had the Saz 18 and the Eagle Rare 17 at Sean's.
Yeah, so
and I'd still go for the George T. personal palate.
I've had both as well, and I think they're pretty underwhelming for what they are.
I've heard that mostly about the Eagle Rare.
Correct.
Yeah,
correct.
That one's more underwhelming than the Saz. Right. But I've not had either of those, so they're not on my radar because I've never gotten a chance to try them. Thanks, Sean. But I'm sure he'll share at some point. But no, since I've had that handy, and me and Sean were out for dinner one night with our wives, and we went to a little bar after dinner, and they had it there, and we got a pour, and man, I just fell in love with that handy. It is some good stuff. So that's the one I'm hunting. But like all of us, we see anything that's deemed exotic, we're all trying to put it in our truck and take it home. So I've been fortunate this year to get some of the, I don't know if you'll call them rabbits and squirrels. They're still tough to get. They're not the big big racked buck that you want to get, but I've done pretty good. So I'm not disappointed at all. I've been very lucky and in the right spot, I guess.
Well, and sometimes if you can land enough of those rabbits and squirrels, you can trade them in for a unicorn.
Yeah, that's true. That's not a bad. I've heard you could do that. So. All right, getting back to this Pappy. I haven't tried the April version yet, the old.
I just tried it.
And?
I'm interested. So it's got a real mild nose to it. I don't think it's lost much between that and the June. However, and it's got a good mouth, but the finish, I think I'm tasting a little bit too much of that damn mason jar lid.
Oh,
That's
are you really?
Personally, I don't know what your thoughts are. Because again, this is one of the ones I put into a mason jar. The rest were just old Pappy.
That might be lesson learned, huh?
Yeah,
can't leave them in a mason jar.
No, again, you can leave them in there for a week to take because I've done that.
Yeah.
I've never tasted it. I'm tasting it on this one. I don't know.
How long has it been in this?
It's been in there since June since April. Sorry, since April.
Okay.
The June bottle we just tasted was in an actual glass bottle, put away in the dark and not exposed to any metal. So this metal lid of the mason jar may have skunked up my Pappy here, but I could be wrong.
What did you think, Cameron? Did you try it yet? The April version?
I have. I think it does have a good nose. Probably not as good as the old rip, but
That's the first thing that stood out to me is this nose for me was better than the June nose of the same thing.
Yeah.
And they're both 60-40, right? 107, Weller 12.
They're exact same mixture.
Yeah, I like
but I
the
agree.
nose.
There's a little funk on the finish.
Yeah.
Is it really?
Yep.
Here we go.
And I think that's what it is. I think it's the mason jar metal.
Yeah. Definitely different on the finish than the one in April because I told you the nose on that one wasn't as similar, but on the palate and on the finish it was very similar.
Oh, the nose is wonderful. But again, I think it's a lesson learned today is, don't let them, like put them in briefly with those mason jars, but take them out and put them in a real freaking bottle going forward. I think that because I've got some we're going to taste here in a little while that are as old as these, but I didn't keep them in mason jars.
Okay.
And the reason I kept it in a mason jar is because that was all that was left from our first after raffle party that we did bottle sharing. And so I wanted to, quote, archive it, for lack of a better term.
Note here, anybody who knows Bryan and you have 375 bottles, give them to you. You will take those.
I will take those 375s.
That sounds like a good bottle to give you. I've got a couple. I need to give those to you just for things like that. All right, well. Am I going to offend you if we?
No, you can pour that down. I think again. I think the finish is funk. I think it is. It's the nose is wonderful. The early mouth is good, but the finish is funk.
Infinity Pappy.
Infinity. Yeah.
Man, that sat on the table for 30 seconds.
That's what my desk does at home.
Does it go well?
Huh? You can clean it. You can just scrub it off. Yeah.
All right, I got us a little center.
We got a center. Okay.
Yeah, we can pour something in there and pour whatever you're not gonna. Now I'm really getting back to my wine world where I feel like we're doing a little taste. I don't know. And dump it out. And this is fun. I'm enjoying this. I'm going
to put this.
I've got to play with bourbons like this before.
That's my old Rip Van Winkle. I'm going to keep that there. I'm going to wash these two out.
And we know you're lucky enough that you have such a big collection that you get to do this. Some people are going to be listening to this going, what the hell are these numbnuts doing? You got a perfectly good bottle of 107 and a perfectly good bottle of Weller 12 or 1910 and 1920. What the hell are you doing, man?
So I have been blessed to get. So I will say that most of my collection, if I took a picture of my collection versus other people out there, I see a lot of people that have got some incredible collections of higher end stuff, much more than mine. I think my sweet spot or my lucky spot, should I say, not because I didn't want it, but just because of what I've fortunately had or had not had. I've got one bottle of George T. I got one old Rip Van Winkle. I've never owned any of the other ones. I've got my first birthday bourbon this year, but all that hard to find, but not hard as hell to find.
Yeah.
I don't have many unicorns. I really don't, but I got a ton of the mid-level and high-end level stuff that's not quite unicorn. So I've got every Elijah Craig barrel proof in the last 2 or 3 years. I've got Weller 12, the 107s, and those things that are hard to find but not impossible.
Exactly.
I've hit that in a sweet spot. And again, my highest end stuff is not all that impressive compared to other guys and girls that are out there collecting. But I got a lot of the
stuff. Absolutely. But I will say, is this the one you won at the raffle from Dandy Liquor?
Yeah.
That's it. Okay. Jay told me that you finished that, and this was another one that you've gotten.
So this is my J bottle, if you will.
Yeah.
And then I have the one that I finally got from my local big distributor person, the first unicorn, if you will, that I've gotten from them versus Jay's store Dandy.
Yeah.
I got one. So this is a bottle. Now I have a open bottle at home, unopened, and then this one.
Okay,
very
nice.
This is Jay's, and then the other one.
Okay, so you did get a second one. That's what he.
I got a second.
Okay,
yeah,
that's nice.
That was I got for end of year allocations from the local bigwig.
You can say their name.
Specs.
Specs.
Yeah, after
Total Wine Specs.
After the millions of dollars spent there, I finally got a present from them, and I've got a lot of other great stuff. Again, I got my first Elijah Craig 18 from them. I cannot complain, but I finally got one of the hard to find was the unicorns, if you will.
Yeah, anybody who listens to this and doesn't know that bourbon is a serious game It's a serious game, fellas. I mean, and for me, you tell me if I'm wrong, but to me, it just popped up maybe 3 to 4 years ago, where it just kind of blew up and exploded.
I think it's almost like, I don't know, I'm not going to get into other analogies, but it had multiple explosions.
Okay.
I will tell you, from living in Tennessee, 2004, 2009, Pappy was still hard to get, but you get it. It would probably be like trying to land a
Weller 12.
Weller 12 or a Elijah Craig, the latest Elijah Craig barrel proof, the
C919.
Yeah, C919.
Okay.
Not quite to the level of a birthday bourbon. It was hard. It wasn't like on the shelves in most places I went in Middle Tennessee, but it with some effort, get it. I wasn't willing to try to pay that much or search that much. I was a little lazy and busy and everything like that, so I didn't go after it. But it was there. And then when I moved here, it was starting to get a little bit harder. And then it had another blip, probably, 2012, 2013, and I could start to see stuff. And that's when I went in my first Elijah 18. And it was like, ooh and ah. Not that I still wouldn't be ooh and ah if I got another one today, but it was like that. And then, like you said, in the past 3 or 4 years, there's been another upturn in insanity in the market of trying to find this stuff, coupled with a 1792 disaster of losing a bunch of barrels in a crash, or them underestimating, because 10 years ago they were kind of, the market, to be getting into business things, it was more bearish than bullish, and so they hadn't anticipated the just fully ridiculous explosion in bourbon enthusiasm, and they now are trying to catch up.
Underproduced, and
now they're trying to catch up.
Yeah. You can't blame them for that. So you are. What's your collection look like now as far as high end versus middle? Where do you? What's your daily drinker? Let's start there, Cameron.
Daily drinker. I don't typically drink every day, but
but I mean, when
you're 107 would be my go-to.
Okay.
That or an Elijah Craig store pick.
Okay. That's a great point. That brings up a point for me that. And I know I'm still young into bourbon, but I think I kind of, skipped maybe a couple of levels. The trajectory was pretty steep. But I'm going to tell you that I've gotten to a point where I like chasing store picks now. When you're talking about your everyday drinkers, a 1792 store pick or Elijah Craig store pick or an Old Forester store pick or, Four Roses store picks are really good. Things like that, or when I see somewhere around town that has a store pick, and now I have a friend up in the Dallas area that I had a conversation with, and I was like, hey, you get some of your store picks, buy a few extra, we'll get some down here, and I go to Dallas sometimes. I have friends that go to Dallas. We'll make a little mule exchange, and let's start. Another one that I'll mention that makes some great store picks is the Russell's Reserve.
Oh yeah, fantastic!
I get some great store picks from them. That 99.
I'll tell you, I'm not a fan of off the shelf Russells. I know some people are, and it's not because I'm anti Wild Turkey, because Wild Turkey 17 is one of my favorites. I love Rare Breed. It's a fantastic everyday Rare Breed is. But I will tell you that Russell's Reserve store picks are some of the best out there.
Yeah, and I was never into Wild Turkey, and never really even tried anything until I got a store pick from the Russell's Reserve, and I didn't even buy it until Jay was nice enough to let me have a sample. It was fantastic, so I ended up buying a couple bottles.
Was that the Sweet 99?
It was.
Yeah.
The Sweet 99. So that was a really good one. But so, what's your high end, Cameron? What do you have? What are you proud of? What do you when you say? Well, show me your good stuff. What do you pull out?
I've got a George T. Stagg, Weller Full Proof.
Weller Full Proof. Now,
Victor's
I had a
10.
little bird flying around me the other day, and he kind of got up in my ear, and I kept hearing something like, he got a second one. He got a second one.
I did not land a second one. I wish I did.
You didn't?
I did not.
Okay, because that little bird was chirping hard. Cameron got a second one.
No, sir.
I'm putting that out on the air.
There you go.
So you only have one.
I only have one.
I was going to be
And
really happy for you if you got two.
It's not a store pick. It's just the regular Full Proof.
You knew what I was thinking if you had two, right?
I landed one from
No.
Liquor Hut.
No. You'd have all kinds of leverage with Edmund.
Oh, yeah.
Because
He's been begging me for the one I have.
Yeah, he's begging you.
Is that the one Edmund's after right
Edmund's
now?
after the Full Proof. So I figured if you got two, that was my comment to Jay.
Hopefully
Look
we're
out,
gonna,
Edmund.
Hopefully we're going to get Edmund on a future podcast of Rob's here.
Yeah, we're going to do a podcast where we run through. Might as well tell everybody.
He has the coolest accent of any everybody I know, because again, my favorite accent in the entire world is South African, and he's got a South African accent. And
Yeah.
just made for radio.
Yeah, if I were into dudes, I'd be into him, just hearing him talk.
Yes.
Yeah. Thankfully, I'm not.
It's almost as cool as the guy on The Mandalorian, the Imperial guy. Have you watched the Mandalorian
Yeah, I do.
series?
I love that show.
Yeah,
Actually, episode 7 or 8 came out yesterday. I got to watch it.
Oh, yeah, okay. I saw 7 just recently.
Yeah.
The bounty hunting is a complicated profession. That's my favorite accent. I love it.
But no, yeah. So my 2 trophies, I guess, would be the William LaRue and the George T. Stagg that I have. I did just recently because, I messed up getting into bourbon, drinking it neat. And when I say messed up, I mean, so I told you I would go and I tried the Crown Royal, and then I bought Hudson Baby Bourbon, but I never drank it neat. I would still mix it or put it with ice or water and stuff. And so finally at a friend's house one night we were doing dinner, and we said, the 3 of us were trying to get into bourbon. We said, everybody bring a bottle, something different we've never heard of, and we're going to take some shots, do a little tasting, see what we like the best. And I'm an idiot. Didn't think to look at proofs, didn't think to look at anything, just we were across the board. We didn't know what we had. The first pour that we had was Booker's.
Oh, wow.
And I thought I was drinking gasoline.
Yes.
For a young palate who hadn't
No.
been exposed to that, to try to drink that and say, hey, here's what I'm getting and I like it. And, it was like, holy cow, put that away and don't ever get it out again. It was rough. But that was probably 2.5 years ago. And so now I've kind of grown up, if you will. And I think my palate has, matured and developed. And I bought a bottle recently of the 2019-4 just to give it a shot, and let's see where I'm at.
Yeah.
So
Beaten biscuits, right?
Beaten biscuits, yeah.
Yeah, no, I think there's something to that. I mean, I've never tried to ramp up my palate in a single night, but I've heard people talk about starting with 80, 90 proof, working to 100, work your way up, not going straight for the Bookers, which is like 125 to 130. But I've started to try to do that recently, and it's not something I had ever done consciously before. My evolution was, Knob Creek Makers, Woodford with a splash of Diet, and after I realized I was getting too trashed watching Game of Thrones watching, it started kind of putting a ball of ice in it, and then went to just straight neat. And I actually feel like I drink less bourbon now that I do it neat. Unless we're having a get-together.
I agree. I agree with that, too, because I'll have just a pour at night, and I'm good to go. You don't have to have... When I used to mix, I mean, it goes down pretty easy when you got a lot of Coke in a cocktail. So that's a big difference. All right, so we're done with Pappy. The next one we're going to try...
The Birthday Bourbon. So I've got, that's from November of this year. Do we have any over there? Cameron's going to open it, and you're going to open it under his microphone so you know that we're opening truly a real bottle.
How hard, I've never tasted or had or seen the Birthday Bourbon in person. How hard is it to find that one?
I would say, honest to God, I have seen more BTAC and Pappy products on shelves, albeit for crazy prices, than I have seen either Parker's Heritage products or Birthday Bourbon. I've only seen pictures on Instagram of Birthday Bourbon.
And here's the question I don't know that any of us know the answer to, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Do we have any idea of the production of that?
I don't. And again,
I'm wondering how much they put out.
Yeah, if I was a better bourbon scientist, I'd know for a fact. Oh, he's going to let me open it. All right, I'm just going to let him open it.
Yeah, I'll let you open your own
This
bottle.
isn't your only bottle, is it?
Yeah.
Oh, man, I feel bad. He's opening a brand new bottle of Birthday Bourbon for us to do this comparison. Yeah. Brian, I feel bad now.
Yeah, it's fine.
I'm excited about this one.
I've heard good things about it.
Have you had the original?
I have not.
I've heard that. Okay, first of all, this is a 11 year and 105 proof. It is the 2019 version. I've heard this is up there in recent years, probably the best one in recent years. Not the best ever, but definitely the best in recent years. So there we are. Hopefully we got that on video or audio there.
Absolutely. That'll come through nicely.
So haven't poured it yet, but just out of the bottle, it doesn't have as much of a nose as Old Rip did. Yeah, here, let's go ahead and pour that out. All right, Rob, get yourself one, and then we'll pass it around. What's that? I, for some reason, I thought I had a second birthday bourbon, but maybe not. If you don't see it over there grossly out in front of you, maybe I didn't bring another one.
Here you go, Cameron. I get a little nervous.
I may have left the more juvenile version that because I know I have at least 2 bottles cooking, if not 3, and I may have left the more.
That's our other. That's the Frankenbourbon.
Yeah,
birthday.
here's the Frankenbourbon birthday.
All right, we'll pour that.
And of course, one of my things, I didn't do it in this one, but I did it in the Poor Man's. Was it what's that? I can't remember. Oh, the Poor Man's Elijah. What was that? What's the one with the it's a Blanton's bottle over there? What's it say?
That's
on it?
Preacher.
Oh, Poor Man's Preacher. So Elijah Craig. So that is a total Frankenbourbon. So it's in a Blanton's bottle. It has no Blanton's in it, and it has a Rock Hill Farms glass topper, which is just as a added education. It's one of the few toppers that will go back and plug open or plug close a Blanton's bottle. Is the
Makes
Rock Hill
sense. They're
Farms.
from the same mom and papa.
Yeah, but there's a lot that just don't plug it, and you got to find it. So it's got a Rocco Farms top, a Blanton's bottle, and it's got no Blanton's or Rocco Farms in it.
That's awesome. So I'm seeing here that I didn't know this. I mean, it makes sense. The birthday bourbon is released on its birthday every year, September 2nd. And did you know the corn percentage in this one?
I do not.
72%.
Oh, nice.
Corn.
Okay.
18% rye, 10% malted barley.
Okay.
I would not have guessed it's that high in corn, but I haven't had it.
I will say that probably predicts a good thing for us here. So
I would agree.
all right, we'll probably start with the original.
Yeah.
Can you tell that kind of a caramel fig nose there? Or?
I got a little nose on that glass. I'm going to pour it into this one, see if I get a little different nose.
I'll get the same one you've got. Yeah,
Good nose.
I like it.
Yeah, it's got a good
That
nose,
nose
too.
is nice. So it's saying this year's version, which is proofed at 105,
correct.
is the highest proof yet for
Is
this bourbon.
I knew last year's was 100. I didn't know it was the highest ever,
Yeah,
but I
this
knew
is
last
the
year's was
highest
100.
proof they've ever done for a birthday bourbon. And again, I'm totally.
I got
green
more
when it-
vanilla on the mouth,
Yeah.
and maybe there's no fig, but which is one of my favorites to have. And we ought to talk about that at some point. You can almost do a birthday a podcast on what to match them with, because there's some dark chocolates and figs, things that really go good with it.
So you got vanilla on the palate.
I got caramel on the nose, and I got a little bit of vanilla / caramel on the palate. How about you, Cameron?
I get a little bit of caramel on the palate. I mean, on the nose. On the nose.
A little caramel on the palate and some fruit too, some dark red fruit.
I just got some dark cherry on it on my second. This is what's so cool about it. And again, not to get too geeky on it, which again I'm prone to do, but every taste you get a little different profile.
Oh yeah, I mean, pour it now, drink it, and then in 10 minutes try it again, and it'll be a little bit different.
Absolutely. Well, that was what again I awarded myself the Amaranth for my Christmas present to myself, and the first pour was one thing. The second pour was better. The second pour reminded me of my first time I ever had it.
So do you know? And I'm just comparing these two high quality bourbons now that we're trying the originals real quick. This is 107, the Old Van Winkle.
Correct.
This is 105,
Correct.
the baby bourbon. Do you know what the percentage is on that one, Brian? As far as corn and
I don't, but we can probably look that up at some point. I do know, since it is a Pappy, it's going to be more along the wheated line, which is what I've always been a soft spot for.
but it still has to have 51% corn.
Yeah, but they toss the rye and substitute wheat, which I love, and I think that's probably why I like that damn Amaranth so much. Is because it's a wheat, a type of wheat, and they've kind of substituted out some of the rye. So I think that's why I've always liked, not to be cliche here, but why I've liked the Rip Van Winkles and the Weller 12s, Weller 107.
Anything in the Weller,
It's because they're the
Buffalo
wheated,
Trace,
wheated line, and I kind of dig that.
Is that what gives it? Because on the Pappy, I get that big, creamy, little more sweetness.
Yep.
Not as hot on the palate, even
No.
though this is 2 degrees off, and it's hotter on the palate.
The rye is
and
spicy.
That's a good segue. Not to get off target too much, but that's why, and we'll talk about in a minute, that the true Frankenbourbons, why I use Weller Green Label, the Special Reserve, just the Weller Green Label, as my mixer on a lot of these blends that I bastardize and put a bunch of stuff in. Weller Green Label is my main ingredient. It's anywhere from 30 to 50% of the mixtures I do because it smooths things out. It's got that weeded, it takes out the fire, and it goes with a lot of stuff. It really blends well with a lot of other bourbons.
And I like that. I like the heat.
So do I.
And it's not overbearing or anything. It's just interesting to me, I guess is the way I'll say it, that that's, 105 versus 107, and it just a little hotter. Yeah. And when I say hotter, spice I like. It's just, to me, I'm not getting as much spice.
Well, when you lose some of that rye, you do get a little smoother, a little more caramel, a little more vanilla, without as much of the burn. And that was why I was actually turned off to Four Roses initially. I've since developed a love for that. That's another one that store picks are fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. I just got exposed to that.
But I had a Four Roses single barrel it was just too spice for me, and I'm like, it's too much rye, and it was a high rye. They've got different versions of theirs, and it was a high rye one, and I didn't really like it. And I came back to it on a store pick and kind of reestablished a relationship.
Was that
with Four
Daryl's
Roses.
pick?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a good one.
That was the green eggs and ham one. Yeah. That was fantastic.
You have a bottle of that still, right?
The OESO?
Yeah.
I do. I haven't cracked it yet.
You haven't cracked it, but you've had it. You've tried it.
I've not tried it.
You haven't tried it yet?
Either.
It's fantastic.
You're going to be very happy with that bottle. So
that's what I hear.
Enjoy. Yeah, that one's really good. I'm still crossing my fingers that I'll be able to land one somehow, some way. Are you hearing this, Daryl? But okay, I'm going to try this the Frankenbourbon
version.
Poor Man's
Birthday
Bourbon. So what else after we try this one, Brian? What else do we have over here?
Oh man, we've got a Poor Man's 4 grain. We've got multiple other ones. Again, they all have got some Weller in them for the most part. I think we ought to kill off the Poor Man's Preacher.
Okay.
So Poor Man's Preacher for you guys is, I had a little bit left of the 12 and a little bit left of the 107 Weller, but I didn't have enough to make a full 370 or full 750. And I had equal amounts, believe it or not, of both of them. So I threw in a 50-50 split of 107 and 12 and then diluted it, or I think made it better, with Elijah Craig Barrel Proof C918. That was the C class from last year, from 2018. And so it's technically 40% 107, 40% 12, Weller 12, and 20% Elijah Craig Barrel Proof. And it has, from audience response of our little KBM group, been the number 2 behind the Poor Man's Birthday.
Really?
Better than the Poor Man's Pappy, believe it or not. But I'll let you two guys decide today. But this is a fantastic one. All right, so now to the Poor Man's Birthday, which again is pretty damn close on the proof. More so than the Poor Man's Pappy, which I think hopefully predicts it's going to be better. Not better, closer to its mommy Pappy.
Yeah.
Than the.
Because you're at what on this one?
This is 106.7, I think.
Versus 105. So
versus 105. Close. Versus the Poor Man's Pappy was maybe 100 versus a 107.
Yeah,
and you could really taste the difference. Even though the nose was pretty kick-ass on the Poor Man's Pappy, the mouth was not as good.
It wasn't as much heat on the mouth, but the flavor profile was pretty close for me on the Pappy. I liked that. Where are you at on this one, Cameron?
I want to hear your thoughts because I've already made up my mind on the Poor Man's Birthday versus the regular birthday.
The nose on the Poor Man's, it has your classic bourbon notes of caramel and vanilla.
That was me putting a little bit more of the birthday back. If you guys want a little more birthday back, the actual Old Forester Birthday, I want to taste them side by side one more time because I think they're pretty damn close, but I don't want to get inside my own head here and my own taste buds and trick myself. They're a little different. The finish is pretty damn close.
I like it on the palate, but you're right. The rye on the original, you get a little bit more bite, but that finish is almost spot on.
Yeah, they're pretty darn close. These are the ones where the mom and the daughter look a lot alike, versus that Poor Man's Pappy was a little diluted. So. Although it's still good, it just wasn't.
Yeah,
it wasn't as close to mom and dad.
The June version on the nose of the Pappy, not as close. But on the palate and the finish, man, it was pretty close.
Yeah.
To your point about a young bourbon drinker not knowing, to give him something in his mind of what he would be getting if he could find a Pappy, that'd be something to try and go, this is going to be pretty damn close.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah, the June was good. Like I said, the April was just skunked out with that mason jar. All apologies.
So this is what you do to try to get something when you can't get your hands on. You've been lucky enough to get your hands on some of the authentic birthday bourbon and Old Van Winkle. But you also just like to play around.
Absolutely.
I mean,
Mad scientist.
You're not trying to create any other. You just want to say, hey, if I took this and added something. One of them that was interesting to me was you said you take, and forgive him. Everybody who's listening, forgive him. You take George T. Stagg Sr. and do what?
So I love George T. And when I try to share it with friends, some of the commentary is that it's a little too hot, a little bit too much for them, kind of like a Booker's. And so I like to blend it, smooth it out. Again, not water it down, but smooth it out with a little bit of Weller Green Label. And that's what we're going to try up here next. It's a 50-50 split. You can see on the mason jar, and I hope it doesn't screw it up here, but the mason jar, you can see it's a 50-50 split, and it's literally been sealed since April 14th, 2019. And so hopefully this is going to be good and not too skunked out.
This is Weller Reserve and George T. Stagg.
50-50 split, George T. Stagg and Weller Reserve. Okay, and this is how I fit it. So some people just throw it into an infinity bottle. I think that's kind of cool. Like, oh, I got just a splash left, not really enough to really share with anybody, but I'm going to throw it in this bottle. And instead of doing that, one of the things I've done is just throw it in a bottle like this. So that's what we're going to do here next. So I'm opening it for the first time since
April.
There we are.
A pour of 50-50 George T. Stagg and Weller Reserve.
Right. It's one of the last ones I mixed without starting to give them their silly names.
Okay.
Like the Reverend Willett and things like that.
And this is not have a name yet?
This does not have a name. I put it away. I never even tried it.
George Weller?
We can make George Weller. Yeah.
Any suggestions, Cameron?
I like that, George Weller.
Yeah, George Weller. Yeah, I like it. Depends on how much you like it. If you like it a lot, we'll come up with another name.
A keeper name.
Yeah, keeper. Yeah.
I mean, it's nice on the nose. I'm not going to lie.
Like a white man stag, kind of. It's
white man stag.
White man stag. It's kind of been, brought down a little bit, smoothed out, mild. Instead of having not as much character.
So you got the George T. Stagg, the Stagg Jr., and this would be just below that.
This would be no. I think maybe below that. Well, honestly, I'd say the George T. Stagg would be the boldest, most firewater of any of them.
It is.
The Stagg Jr. even can be pretty potent as well. But
Stagg Juniors are typically very hot.
That's the problem.
They're
too young.
124 to 132.
And they drink that hot.
Versus George T. usually doesn't. Stagg Jr. drinks its proof. George T. drinks its age.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So this would fall where?
This would be a better intro into letting people know what they might get with a George T.
I think that's
because
good.
the Stagg Jr. is another profile.
Yeah,
Stagg Jr. is one that to this day, even I put an ice ball in.
Yeah, same name. So you think it might be similar?
Yeah, no.
Not similar.
This
totally
is
different.
This is your one teenager who's just kind of an ass and a little bit aggressive. It would be the Stagg Jr. Still there, still your kid, but a little crazy.
I'm digging this. It's really good.
All right.
What is the proof? Is it around 90 still with the Weller Reserve?
Weller Special Reserve, I believe, is 90 proof.
Is it
Special
80 or
Reserve?
90? Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, I like this.
Yeah?
I like this. You know what I didn't do with this one?
What?
So I took that mason jar lid off and set it aside and did not pour it out of the mason jar. I poured it, took off the lid and avoided it and poured it straight into a glass to avoid any contact with the lid that already hadn't happened.
Oh, that's...
And so the other one, I kind of pulled it off. I shook it back and forth on that poor man's.
Yeah, I shouldn't have done
I think
that.
that hosed me. I think I got a little bit because you can see. Look at what's hanging out in the top of that jar. That lid is just some of the debris from the bourbon being in there.
Oh, that is nice.
This is nice. This is you know what this is? This is a less mouthful of the current 116. Because the new George T 2019 is a 116 proof versus the others in the 120 to 130.
It's only 116, the new one?
Only 116 , but it is
That's
just
an easy drinker for
amazing.
George T. Stagg.
It's great.
This one,
I wouldn't know, Cameron.
This one,
I don't have one either. Talk to Brian.
I heard I'm supposed to talk to Michael.
Michael Michael has one open.
That's what I mean.
I have one and it's not open
Yeah.
yet. But this one reminds me of that.
Tell Michael if he'll share it, I'll buy the pizza.
Oh,
Cook the pizza.
Or cook the pizza. Absolutely.
oh, this is good.
Yeah, 129.2.
That's the 2017.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I used to make what
That's
we're
the
drinking
18.
now.
Yeah, that's the 18.
And then what you got here is the 2018. But what we've been drinking has been 50% 2017 George T. Stagg and 50% of Weller Green Label.
Are you going to be offended if I tell you this might be my favorite one today?
No.
This
Is that the birthday
real-
or the poor man's?
This is the George T. Stagg with the Weller Reserve.
Oh no. I'm not going to be offended. I just told you, it's never been open since April of April 14th, 2019. I put it in there and sealed it.
So where does this proof down to? What was the ratio on this
Oh,
one?
goodness. Okay, well, let's find out. Let's hold on just a second.
Because we're at 90 and we're at, what did you say this was? 128?
129.2.
So let me clear
129.2?
that. So from an identity.
Georgie Dub.
George, yeah.
Or white man's George T.
Yeah, the George T. Weller, whatever. Yeah, I like all those. But again, 110 is the proof on that one.
And
it's fantastic.
yeah,
That's
that's
fantastic.
I mean, if I had to rank them today, the three that we went through, this would be my number one. Then your Pappy from June,
Okay.
as far as on the palate. On the nose, the nose was better on the April one, but the finish was a little funky.
No, it was.
And then
And then the birthday.
just because
Okay.
I missed that, the rye stands out in that original so much.
So I've never done them head to head.
yeah,
This is
and-
literally, I've never opened this bottle. This is head to head. Before, everyone thought the poor man's birthday was the best of the mixtures.
Yeah.
But I've never done
that,
that.
that could be what they like, but just for me, I missed that bite on the poor man's version
Yeah.
of the birthday.
Yeah, I agree. It has less of a bite.
Where are you stand, Cameron?
I'm George Weller.
You're first?
First.
You're with me.
I'm with you on that
All right.
one. But I'm swapping the other two. I think the poor man's birthday
You like that
is
one better than the
poor
Pappy?
man's Pappy.
Okay. Well, I'm going to say I've had a fun time, a great time tasting all these bourbons today, Brian. Thank you for
Oh, thank you. Thanks for
bringing
having me.
these in. And
Yeah. Thanks for the votes.
But here's the thing: this is going to be, if with your permission,
Yeah.
a kind of a series. Let's
I'd love to.
Let's do these every once in a while and see what you're coming up with and what we like and different things that you're doing. But Cameron, I've enjoyed the different.
Yeah,
bourbons.
thanks for having me.
Yeah, these have been great. So, thank you everybody for listening to another episode of Food, Wine, and Whiskey in Your Own Backyard. And look for another episode coming out soon. We're going to do one on the Elijah Craig Barrel Proof. We're going to cover the 2019 A, B, and C releases. But thank you for listening to another episode of Food, Wine, and Whiskey in Your Own Backyard. Until our next episode, enjoy your next pour.